Your final lecture. I'm going to open up the slides. This is a lecture on chapter 12 and 13. In these two chapters, we're going to talk about monopolistic competition and oligopoly. And this will close out the entirety of the course. We've talked a lot about um, different aspects of managerial economics. In chapter 1, we kind of gave you an introduction. Chapter 2 went through supply and demand. Chapter 3, we talked about optimization and how to optimize using marginal benefit and marginal cost. Chapter 4, we involved statistics to show you that the supply and demand aspects we've discussed in the past are applicable, that we can actually apply them. In Chapter 6, we moved on to elasticity. In Chapter 7, we showed you that we could estimate a demand curve. In the latter chapters, 8 and 9, we looked into costs. And more recently, we've gotten into perfect competition and monopoly. And now we're going to go through other industrial makeups, including monopolistic competition and oligopoly. So let's start with monopolistic competition. Monopolistic competition is a market structure in which many firms sell a differentiated product, and entry into and exit from the market are relatively easy. So a key word here is differentiated product. Keep in mind, with perfect competition, we had a homogeneous product, meaning no difference. So examples here could be furniture, jewelry, leather, grocery stores, gas stations, restaurants, clothes, medical care. They would all probably fall into the monopolistic competition segment. What are some characteristics? Relatively large number of sellers. So unlike monopoly, which only has one, monopolistic competition means there's a relatively large amount of sellers. So most have small market share. Collusion is unlikely. Differentiated products. Again, the product is slightly different and is often promoted by heavy advertising. There's easy entry and exit. So economies of scale are few, capital requirements are low, but there are some financial barriers. So let's stick with differentiated products. So this is a form of non-price competition in which a firm tries to distinguish its product or service from competing ones on the basis of attributes such as design or the quality. Um, so it's going to entail looking at product attributes, the service, location, the brand name, the packaging, and some control over the price. When I think of this, I think of something that's a relatively similar product, but you use the different package to try to differentiate. So something like water, water bottles differentiate, or um, you'll notice with soda or beer sales, for example, sometimes when it's more of a generic product that's similar, um, they try to differentiate by making a different type of bottle. So typically with monopolistic competition, advertising is used frequently, and the goal is to make price less of a factor in the consumer purchase and make those product differences, which might be limited, but they're going to try to spell them out in greater detail. So the intent is to increase the demand for the product and make that demand less elastic. In other words, make it less price sensitive. So how do we price in monopolistic competition? The demand curve of the monopolistically competitive firm is highly but not perfectly elastic. The price elasticity of demand for a monopolistic competitor deepens on the number of rivals and the degree of product differentiation. The larger the number of rival firms and the weaker the product differentiation, the greater the price elasticity of each firm's demand. In the short run, the monopolistically competitive firm maximizes profit or minimizes loss right at the point at which marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So it's going to produce at that point, and then it will charge a price based on its demand curve. So when the price is greater than the average total cost, you'll see firms earning an economic profit and when price is less than the average total cost, the firm will incur a loss. In the long run, only a normal profit is earned. So in the long run, firms will enter a profitably monopolistically competitive industry and leave an unprofitable one. A monopolistic competitor will earn only normal profit and price just at where the marginal revenue is equal to the marginal cost and that output associated at that point. Since entry is relatively easy, economic profits will attract new rivals into the industry. And as those new firms enter, the demand curve faced by the typical firm will shift to the left, and that will reduce economic profit. When entry of new firms has reduced demand to the extent that the demand curve is tangent to the average total cost curve, at that profit maximizing output, the firm is just making what's called a normal profit, leaving no incentive for new firms to enter the industry. When the industry suffers short run losses, some firms will exit. As firms exit, the demand curve for the surviving firms will shift to the right, reduce loss until the firms are just making a normal profit again. So, in monopolistically competitive environments, neither the productivity or allocative efficiency occurs in the long run. Um, you'll have situations with excess capacity, which is the gap between the minimum average total costs output and the profit maximizing output is a monopolistically competitive firm's excess capacity. So, monopolistic competition has industries which are overcrowded with firms, each operating below its optimal capacity. You also see product variety and improvement. Despite the overcrowded feature, monopolistic competition does promote product variety and innovation and improvements. A firm earning a normal profit will develop and improve its product in order to regain its economic profit. And successful product improvements by one firm will obligate rivals to imitate and improve on that firm's temporary market advantage, or else they're just going to lose business and be driven out. Okay, I'm going to actually stop here, and in the next video, we'll get into oligopoly.